standing on the corner just a wasting my time. When I realized I was the king of the rhyme, I got on the microphone to let niggas see supremacy is my legacy. My weaponry speaks to niggas in telepathy. I'm more untouchable than leprosy. Come off wretchedly with lyrics filled with lechery. So don't step to me with treachery. Rapper after rapper, I consecutively blow out their trajectory. Prospectively, I'm nice, but I hate to brag. And if mics were a gun, then mine's a 45 mag. Niggas that are snitches are really bitches and drag. Switch till I swag, cells up my brain. Die and go on to another plane. Out of nowhere I came. Pack flame with the Lee Harvey Oswald type aim. My sounds be booming, flows I consuming. Like I'm not human, not normal, not mortal, but cybernetic. Lyrics embedded, ready to set it. So whoever steps here is getting shredded from the right to the left here. I'm so cool, I got formaldehyde in my vein. My flow is hemlock, leaving whack MC slain. I got it hemmed up, kid. I got it locked down. I got it hemmed up, kid. I got it locked down. I got it hemmed up, kid. I got it locked down. I got it hemmed up, kid. I got it locked down. So taste the hemlock, y'all. Taste the
Yes, y'all. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The House List, my weekly podcast. My name is Peter Agasta. I'm the host and the producer of the show. This is my weekly podcast. Yes, it's called The House List. You can catch it on iTunes, Google Play, the Stitcher app, and of course on SoundCloud. That's soundcloud.com, The House List Podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And if you're tuning in because of my illustrious guest today, then what a treat you're in for. I got to tell you, it's an incredible conversation that we had. And I was really honored to talk to the guy, Mr. Voodoo from Natural Elements, N-E. Yes, Agu, Mr. Voodoo, straight out of New York City, Fort Greene, Bedside, Brooklyn. And we had an awesome, incredible conversation about his life and his career, the trajectory of him as a solo act, but also the story of Natural Elements and the kind of evolution in Natural Elements as a group, both with at first as a concept and then as a melded into a group. So there's a lot of artists that are kind of loosely associated with it, produced by the one and only Charlemagne, Fortress Records, Fortress Entertainment. Were huge in the college radio scene, I guess, outside of New York City, but in the New York City circuit, especially on New York City radio in the mid 90s into the early 2000s. But there was a period of time where Natural Elements was just synonymous with underground radio in New York. And Voodoo was actually a radio personality at WBAI, the Underground Railroad, with Jay Smooth, the undeniable, incredible thinker and awesome host and journalist. Jay Smooth, super cool dude. And so we kind of talk about all of that stuff. And it was really a treat for me. It was really cool. I mean, even to the point where I kind of came to realize this basically right before we met up and did this conversation, was that the name Culturama. Now, some of you guys know, for years I did an underground hip-hop music video compilation of collection of music videos. It came out in different videos. I did 7 volumes of it from like 1998 till about 2005. That was called Culturama. It was called the Culturama Rap Music Video Collection. And I even went and did a touring festival of it. I played in music videos in movie theaters and music festivals. This is all predates YouTube for the most part. And even my handle on Instagram is at Culturama, Culturama. That name came from a misunderstood lyric by Mr. Voodoo. So Culturama, which many people associate me with, really is, I can attribute, and we do in the conversation. It's pretty amazing. I was looking forward to telling him this too. But there's a Natural Elements song on a record that came out in 1997 on Dolo Records, Stretch Armstrong's label of that time. They did their one and only single on the label. And these guys didn't release actually a lot of singles, really. So it's one of their only, as known as Natural Elements. Bust Mine and Paper Chase. The B-side, Paper Chase, which I'm going to close the show out on, is a lyric that I interpreted in the moment when I first heard it in 97, 98 as him saying Culturama. And I was like, that's so cool. That's so whatever that is, I need to flip that somehow, because that shit's dope. Culturama. And it went on for many years. And I completely attribute that to Mr. Voodoo and his inventive style of lyricism. I mean, he's an incredible lyricist, a writer, just a great artist, that I feel like never really got his due, nor did Natural Elements. And I'm a huge fan of their material. As hopefully, if you guys are tuning into this, I'm sure that this is striking a chord with a lot of the classic quote-unquote underground hip-hop fans of that era, record collectors and DJs, especially of the late 90s, mid-90s to late 90s, because there was a certain mystique and lure with Natural Elements, Mr. Voodoo, L. Swift, even the works of Fortress Records, Nightbreed, which we talk about, Charlemagne, that there was only a couple little physical pieces of wax that you could get, but a lot of material which was taped off of New York radio and traded on the black market, if you will, of tape trades, of underground hip-hop tape trades through the 90s on places like rec.music.hip-hop and different kind of just hand-to-hand dubs of people, both in New York City, but they then permeated all over the world. And Natural Elements, I feel like it was at the forefront of that material. Yeah, of course, Godfather Don, I think, is another great example of that. And they're definitely different artists, but because they had such a wealth of material that was never released physically, and they did a lot of radio promos and stuff, this is all this surge of amazing songwriting and production by Charlemagne, and it just, I had so much stuff I wanted to ask him and talk to him about. So I'm not going to talk your ear off. I know I do that a lot with these intros, but this is a particularly a special show for me, and I know that you guys are going to dig this. Again, if this is your first time listening, this is my weekly, sometimes bi-weekly podcast. It's about people in music. It's not always about hip-hop, sometimes about other genres. Sometimes I talk to people behind the scenes, journalists, publicists, booking agents, managers, tour managers, and the like. You can find it on iTunes. Please subscribe, rate it. If you listen to podcasts on SoundCloud, then repost this, copy and paste the link, put it on your blog or website, whatever you got to do. I do this for a labor of love. This isn't a paid thing. I don't work for nobody. I just want to have these conversations with people. It's very fulfilling for me as a fan, and I love sharing these too. So, but I wouldn't be doing this, and I wouldn't be such a fan of Natural Elements and Mr. Voodoo if it wasn't for Stretch Armstrong and Bobbito. I want to give them a strong shout out because I feel like they really introduced the world to them in a certain regard. I want to, also I think you can't be discounted the great efforts of Martin Moore and DJ Mayhem of WNYU of the time, Jay Smooth, of course, of WBAI. Even Dante Ross, who I learned was kind of instrumental in certain regards of their career. And I just even want to shout out Oliver Wang, O-Dub, and Ed Wong, where I used to work in New York when I first moved to New York in 1998 at Sandbox Automatic, and even my man Peter Rosenberg. These are just people that I know help push and always supported the Natural Elements cause. Mr. Voodoo, Swigga, a.k.a. L. Swift, A. Butta, Charlemagne, and the whole clique. Shout out to Ka and Nightbreed. Of course, I'm a huge fan. Even the Raider Men. So, without further ado, I needed to just set that up. And, of course, we open the show with Hemlock, an incredible classic, undeniable song from Mr. Voodoo. Hope you guys appreciated that little throwback for you. And then, I guess without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with the one and only Agu, a.k.a. Mr. Voodoo, here only on The House List. Check it out, y'all. Like, all I have to go off of are the releases that you put out, because Now I started.
There was so much more to it before.
Yeah, and if you didn't live in New York City, then I think a lot of people who only know your music from tape, like the era of trading dub tapes through the early internet, through the message boards and the news groups and stuff, pre any kind of social networking with people.
Right.
Like they have this sort of they kind of have this identity for you guys as these as Natural Elements and Mr. Voodoo as like, you know, these underground. You guys were these underground kings of underground hip hop at the height of that genre too. I feel like, but there's obviously so much more to the story because you get like these sort of scratchy rips off of the radio, and I feel like that too plays such a big role in your story. Is the radio and New York radio, and there's a long history in New York radio that you're like you play a part in too. That I feel like the average hip hop head or record collector has no idea of that too. Right. So I mean, I'd love to even try to go back even a couple steps before that, before you even, you know, maybe started professionally recording or doing the radio.
Sure.
But so you grew up. You're a native New Yorker though, right? For sure.
Yeah, born and raised in Brooklyn. Crazy time in the I'm a child of the 80s.
Okay.
And so I grew up in Brooklyn. It was a crazy time.
What part are you? Were you? Did you spend most of your childhood?
Well, I'm mainly from Fort Greene, but I wound up because I was so close to Bed-Stuy. I wound up going to all of the schools in Bed-Stuy. Right. So I had Fort Greene on one side and I had Bed-Stuy on the other side. So, but when I'm pressed, I'll let everyone know that I was born and raised in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. Sure. You know, but it's also very, very close ties to Bed-Stuy.
So high school was in Bed-Stuy?
Well, I wound up leaving Brooklyn to go to high school. I went to high school in Manhattan. I actually went to the high school. I went to a specialized high school because I actually am an artist. I can draw. The first Mr. Voodoo logo, was the one that I drew.
The one on
the fortress. The first fortress. Well,
on Come Off Hard
well, see, the thing is this: when we did that one I didn't do. That one I didn't do, but the dude that did it for me based it off of the original one that I had. We had these stickers. Remember the sticker campaigns that everybody used to go on?
Absolutely.
So my idea was to create a logo for myself. We'll make stickers and we'll plaster them all over the place. That's a good way of promotions. To put the face and the name and the artist.
And in New York City too. I mean, it's such a tradition too.
Right.
You know?
So that background, being able to do that, comes from the fact that I went to music and art, and I studied art there for the 4 years. So it was a wonderful experience because it took me away from the element that was there in Brooklyn, right? Which wasn't a great element, you know. So I credit, you know, my mom for keeping me in art and having me go to art classes on Saturday and just kind of giving me an alternative as opposed to what my friends were doing, you know. So I became the dude, yo, Vo, I need you to draw me something. Could you draw this? Could you draw that? You know, so I became that kid in school. And because of that talent, it took me to music and art. And I stayed
it's like a natural progression before you can, because I think a lot of people that would become vocalists or musicians, you know, some of their earliest experiences with art is drawing.
Yeah, a lot of guys started out as graffiti artists before they started rapping. Rakim, KRS-One,
right.
They were all graffiti artists before they even decided that they wanted to spit. So you know, it's sort of the way the world is created. You have the universe was created on a thought, and the thought brought about, you know, a word, you know, and metaphorically speaking. We all know that that's not exactly how it was created, but when you deal on a metaphysical level, you know that it was a creative imagination that drives everything.
Absolutely.
So even if you don't believe, if you believe in a higher force or you don't, you know that creative imagination comes from a special place.
Yeah.
So we had to have all of that before we even get to the point where we can articulate it.
Absolutely,
you know?
yes.
So this is what it was for me. It was a deep appreciation for art. And then from there, it became an appreciation for word and music and everything that encompasses that.
Were you like a comic book kid too?
Yeah, I was. It was actually a childhood dream to be like the next John Byrne of comics, you know. I grew up on that, X-Men, all of that stuff, you know.
Well, you know, it's funny now thinking of Natural Elements too, and like the identities that you guys sort of have within the group. There is a kind of like a superhero, otherworldly quality to that, even with the fire, earth, wind intro and stuff.
And that is a great. See, we grew up in a great time where we had all these influences. We had the comics, we had the kung fu and karate flicks. We had so many things that was at our disposal that played such an important part in how we vocalized and we verbalized and we created and we did our art. So those were things that influenced me. And so coming up in a rough era, you know, it provided a sort of an asylum away from all of the craziness, and I wound up avoiding a lot of stuff because of it, you know. Yeah,
well, it can protect you, it can strengthen you too, and it gives you, like, you know, obviously it can give you a reason to be somewhere, to be doing something, you know.
And that was the thing, because when I grew up in Brooklyn, too much of it was us not having anything to do, and was no real community programs. In the Reagan era, they got rid of all of that. You know, those programs were done. You know, the older people were involved in their life. They had issues, and a lot of times they forgot about us. So we were left to ourselves a lot with nothing to do. And they always say, you know, when you leave youthful minds to themselves, they find mischief. So in my era, that is basically, you know, how a lot of things, you know, went down. It was just they had nothing better to do. You know? So
then during this time, were you, I mean, obviously you were exposed to music and listening to music. I mean, that's just a part of growing up. The same way you would watch movies and TV of that era and comics. And you know, I was born in '79, so I would call myself an '80s baby too, for what it's worth. And so there was a lot of amazing creative stuff that was there to be found, you know, both musically and visually and stuff like that. So
like J. Rue used to say, I'm from the era before graffiti-proof trains. So that was the first thing that really struck me.
The trains.
The trains. My grandmother, may she rest in peace, she's from the Bronx. My mom's is a Bronx girl, Soundview Projects. So
you got a lot of trains on that horizon.
All those trains that we saw the culture. You know, we saw it. You know, because we was right there. The junior high school rock right there. You know, that was the junior high school right there. So, you know, my family being from up in the Bronx, you get to see that, and that intrigued me. And you get to see, like, I got to see, you know, Rapper's Delight, and I got to hear, and I got to, you know, the whole Cold Crush with the tapes era, you know, being that I was young, I was in junior high, elementary school.
Did you have siblings? Do you have any
I had older cousins and stuff like that, you know, and then it's funny because people don't realize how much of a phenomenon hip hop was before it even got to Sugar Hill. Know? People don't
in New York,
in New York,
the surge, like the real
like it was
thing.
Such a phenomenon that it was like Sugar Hill was probably like late, you know, It was maybe a late culmination of everything that was going on at that time. But it was such a phenomenon. I mean, if you can think about something that started with small cliques in the Bronx, had reached all the way into Brooklyn, into Queens, we were getting the tapes. Right. You know, I remember my man Tilo from Marcy Projects. We went to junior high together, and we used to sneak the box and with the tapes, and we would pop the tape, and we would just be listening to Cold Crush versus Fantastic Four in the schoolyard, and we would just be staring at the box like it was a TV, like, yo. Wow. And that's where I first caught the fever, the fervor for it. And
were there jams? There were obviously jams in Brooklyn, right?
There were jams in Brooklyn that I was too young to go to. Right. So the only thing that I had was the tapes that my homies were bringing around for us to hear.
Sure,
So
that even conjures the imagination.
Oh yeah,
more.
yeah. Right. Brooklyn was everywhere. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've heard tapes where I've heard Cold Crush tapes where they like at Harlem World. And they're like, yo, is Brooklyn up in here? And we making the most noise. Wow. And they had to acquiesce, like, yo, Brooklyn is up in here, We from uptown, but Brooklyn, so we was everywhere. Right. And that's how we got the tapes, because those older cats that could go to the clubs and be at them places at that time would get the tapes and bring them back to us. And we would be listening. And as young kids, that's how we caught the fervor for it. So that's my really earliest memory of it. Ain't really even Sugar Hill. You know, I remember going and seeing Sugar Hill and telling my mom I want that record. And she got the record for me. But before Sugar Hill, we was hearing what they were doing.
Right. I mean, and before that, it wasn't like you could buy the record, go into a store and buy a record, for the most part. Perhaps you could, but I mean, but Sugar Hill really made it like a product that anybody could walk into a store.
That was right. It was something, and this is something that the younger generation and the younger cats out there take for granted, because what we have is a situation where people are born into this now. Right. They cannot even fathom the idea of a time when hip hop wasn't on the radio, when you had to stay up late, way late, but before you're like sneaking, like if my mom catch me with, she gonna beat my ass. Right. I ain't supposed to be up 1, 2, 3 in the morning with this, that type of thing. And we have generations, we have maybe 3 generations that can't even fathom the idea of hip hop not being something that you can just switch the radio on and hear.
Right. I mean, a lot of kids now, it's like they have unlimited access, to everything.
Right. And back then, what made it special to us, and what made it special and what gave it that mystique was just that. Right. It wasn't accessible to everyone. Sure. It was in some of the most dangerous parts of the city. You had to go to get to it. There was that mystique and that aura of danger that made it what it was.
Yeah, and get on the train and go
get on the train.
Exactly. That's its own journey.
That's its own adventure upon itself, because a lot of things could happen to you on that trip.
It's funny too, because that G train now, which is like a very commonly used train, used to be like, I remember. So I used to tour with Sadat X, and he used to tell me how they called it the gangster train, just because it was a slower train too. So
it was a real slow train. Yeah, it's funny because it used to be the GG train, right?
Oh, right.
It's a different route really now.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a different route now, because what happened was the G used to go all the way to Forest Hills.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
And then it made its way. I think it didn't go as far into Brooklyn as it did now. I think it stopped at Smith and 9th. It didn't go all the way to Church. But it was that trip. in between, there's a thing between I think like maybe Greenpoint or Metropolitan and like Flushing.
Right.
And it was funny because Marcy is from Flushing to Myrtle and Willoughby. Those are the two stops. So those cats used to ride the train back and forth. We used to go to a roller rink called the USA Roller Rink.
Yeah.
And in Jackson Heights. And the G train took you there because the G train used to go to that stop.
Right.
So, you know, I could remember a lot of guys, man, getting caught out there in that little stretch between, I think, maybe Metropolitan to Flushing.
It's just those couple of stops.
It's like it's like maybe about a 2-minute stretch.
Right.
It's one of those long stops. And they would just plot, and they would just watch, and they would wait for the right time, and they would get them. And before they could do anything, they're off the train and Flushing. Wow. And in the PJs, and you know, so yeah, it was a dangerous thing. It was a dangerous time, excuse me, to get to where you wanted to go and to be involved in the culture. And a lot of the kids now take that for granted. So that's where I come up in, and that's what molded me.
Right.
You know, as an artist.
So how does that then like kind of translate to rhyming? Because I mean, even with the first record, obviously a ton of stuff happens in your life leading up to that, but you're still got to be like a teenager when that first record came out, right?
I was up when Sugar Hill came out. I wasn't even in the double digits.
Yeah, but I'm talking about when you started rhyming and releasing your own material.
Oh well, when I started releasing my own material. Well, see, the thing is that you don't just get up one day and say that you're going to be a rapper.
Right.
And I mean, at least when we did it.
Yeah, I think it applies back to that time.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't
you don't know. Well, now it's a little different because you can basically say you're a rapper now and post something on the internet, and if it takes off, well, now you're a rapper.
Right. You could kind of figure it out after that.
Right. Yeah. You couldn't really do that back then. You couldn't say I'm a rapper and then that's just that. Right. There was a whole code. There was a whole process that you had to go through. So I always said I rapped, but I wasn't a rapper.
Right.
I rapped, but I wasn't an MC. And what I mean by that is that I have been rapping. I write my little raps, and I'd be rapping, and I'd be following what I hear on my tapes. And then, you know, some of the guys that I was listening to, Treacherous 3, Kumo D, LA Sunshine, Special K, Tila Rock, they brought lyricism in terms of vocabulary and all of that to another level.
Yeah, man.
So that was my influence. Cold Crush and all of them for showmanship and routines.
Yeah.
You know, and then you go into the era where it started transitioning, and you got people like you know, Kane and KRS-One, the Juice Crew, BDP, Rakim, Biz, all of those guys, they started transitioning. And I think that it was somewhere in there that I started taking it a little bit more seriously than I did before.
Sure.
Like I would go in school and spit stuff to make people laugh, you know, but it became a thing where when I started hearing the level of lyricism that this thing could be taken to, especially with cats like the pioneers of that, really to me was like cats like Kumo D.
Yeah. Who doesn't really get probably the credit and props he deserves.
But you can talk to a lot of cats and they'll tell you. Right. You can talk to Kane, you can talk to Rakim, and you can talk to all of these cats that we hold in high esteem. Right. And they'll go, we hold those dudes in high esteem. Yeah. Their vocabulary was immaculate.
Oh yeah.
You know, the way that they put the way that they could put the words together and make it make sense.
Right.
You know, even today I hear like stuff and I'm hearing words and I'm like, yo, where these guys had to be reading dictionaries or something.
Right, yeah.
You know, so
Mo D had a crazy
just
vocabulary.
The vocab, yeah. So you know, those are the things that shaped me. And then like I said, I didn't really start taking it seriously until I heard those dudes.
Right.
Oh, and Slick Rick.
Of course.
Slick Rick for that same thing.
Well, the songwriting starts to get a little more sophisticated then too. I mean, it's stories, it's like cinematic, and then music videos start to come about too.
Right.
Yeah.
So that really was, for me, it was a personal thing. It wasn't something that I felt compelled to come out with at first.
Right.
And this was most of my teen years. So most of my teen years I was writing. I had all these books, you know, and I did. And I wound up going to BMCC, a community college. And what happened was BMCC was like... it wasn't like no other. I mean, it just felt like it was an extension of high school.
Right.
You know, you have cats in the cafeteria, everybody fly, you know, and it was just like it wasn't really like a regular college, you know.
Is it downtown?
Yeah, Borough Manhattan.
Right.
And it's funny because you have a lot of guys that pass through that system. You know, AZ. I remember seeing AZ. AZ, as a matter of fact, was good friends with my man Tim, the Intimidator. If y'all are familiar with, he was good friends with him, and they used to always be rhyming back and forth. Yo, what you got for me, son? Yo, check this. And AZ be like, yo, I got something, blah, 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 blah. But I always was just be in the cut watching them and doing, and I'm looking at what they doing and stuff, you know. And I had a dude named Dante Pacino, for the people that, and he was my man. Like, we were friends before rap and BMCC.
Really? Okay.
And he was like, yo, man, I'm rhyming and I'm doing. He said, I be listening to cats and do, but I don't be wanting to get in the, you know, but I rhyme and I got a, you know, studio, and I be going up to the BX, and there's this cat named Charlemagne, and he was like, yo, you know, he started spitting, and I was like, word, yo, I rhyme too. So I hit him with something, and he was like, oh, and he was laughing. He's like, yo, I never heard no shit like that before, man. Wow. He was like, I'm gonna bring you up there. So long story short, I go up there and I spit something for Charlemagne, and Charlemagne was like, next week you're gonna start recording.
Dope.
Right?
Wow.
So Charlemagne was the guy who took me as a youngster. I was like maybe about 18, 19 at that time.
This is early 90s then,
yeah? Late 80s, early 90s.
Right,
yeah, like late 80s, early 90s. And he took me, this must have been about maybe 89, 90.
Wow, okay.
And because I was like about 18, 19. And he took me and he was like, yo, you're going to come up here, you're going to record demos. He was like, I know you I didn't know nothing about songs, how to write songs. I didn't know nothing about bars. I had these songs that had like 24, 48 bars and no chorus. You know, I didn't know nothing about that. Just lyrics. Like and we, you know, week after week we came in, we learned the idea of songwriting and bars and counting bars.
Was he trying to? Did he school you on that? Did he try to?
He did. He didn't school us. Yeah, he didn't school us. He kind of guided us.
Yeah, that might be the wrong. School might have the wrong connotation.
He did. He was a guide. He didn't kind of try to tell us how to rap or what to rap about or do it like this or do it like that. He just kind of made suggestions. He throw, yo, Voodoo, you might want to try to do this way. And then he started telling us like about, you know, counting bars and you have verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse. So how many of you want to do it, but the structure of a song.
So Charlemagne already was well versed in producing songs.
Well, Charlemagne has an extensive background in terms of DJing. He's very familiar. Yeah, even then he was very familiar with the music.
Right.
You know, he was a fan just like we were. If any album that we wanted to hear before it came out, he'd have it.
Nice.
He'd have a demo. He'd have, you know, so this is just something that we were all just fans.
Yeah.
And a love for the music and the culture. So
well, at that time too, I mean, 89, 90, I mean, Public Enemy, NWA's, all, like, it's just so much amazing material.
So that was the thing. And the funny thing was that at the time, I had been the idea for Mr. Voodoo had actually come from X-Clan, right?
Yeah, well, the famous Brother J.
Yeah, Brother J was a big influence for me. Like, most of the time my rhymes back then was in his cadence and in his more metaphysical thing.
Right.
A lot of my rhymes was like that. And, you know, that I was sort of like considered the conscious rapper before there was a such thing as a conscious rapper. Because at the time I was reading and I was involved in getting knowledge of self and all of that. So it was spilling out into what I was writing.
Right.
So I was writing like an MC, but I was also incorporating a lot of knowledge and things like that in there. So that's what killed them more than anything, is they never heard it put the way that I put it.
Cool.
So
I mean, yeah, man, and X-Clan, those two albums too. I mean, Exodus and To East Blackbirds too are just so incredible records.
Classic records.
Because there's nothing like it to that combo of Professor X and Brother J too, and they just had such a unique charisma between the two of them.
Right.
You know?
So peace to Brother J, because he was a definite strong influence. And you know, the funny thing is that as fans, we didn't make distinctions.
Right. Right.
If you were dope, you were dope. We didn't care, well, okay, he's talking that gangster. Okay, but we listened to the music, how it was crafted. You know, we were fans. The distinction wasn't made because it was a small community. It wasn't as big as it was back then. So we had to have some sort of unity in order to push this platform and make it what it is today. So we didn't have time to create those distinctions there. You know, oh, well, I don't rap like that, but I'm not going to say that that's not dope. Yo, they're dope. Right. You know, so you get a gangster, he got his cables, and he hood, and he's sitting there, and he listening to X-Clan, and he going, yo, this is dope. You know, now you can't get that. They like, man, take that bullshit. You know, so we didn't make that distinction back then. Right. So this is what influenced I'm just trying to give an idea of what influenced and shaped me as an MC. So I had all these influences. And so this was what we were doing. And we were doing this for a few years before we even got to the point where we felt we were ready to put something out.
Wow, okay.
All right.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so that's that. And then how that came about is a whole nother thing in itself, because I had the studio that I was working out of with Charlemagne. We had all these MCs, but I also had my own personal endeavors that I was doing at the time, you know, and so
which is what at this point in time?
That leads us right into the radio thing, right?
Yeah. So that is a part of your history that I knew, but I didn't know. I don't really know the real story with it, because I know Jay Smooth, and he's an incredible guy. I feel like he's a great thinker, but I don't want to get ahead of myself too, because I really would like to know how the radio thing fell together with you.
Well, as there was a few things that I was doing, because at the end of the day, in my mind, I always saw what was the plan and what was the goal. And the plan was to perform and to be an MC. And so I felt that in order to be an MC, I had to be able to understand all the nuances of it.
Right.
So in my personal life, I endeavored to get involved in groups that would help me become a better MC. So I was involved in a group of a young talent group called Yahweh. And what they were doing was, there was a troupe that would perform, and they would do little skits and music and dance and things like that. I got involved in that as the resident rapper. But what that taught me was stage presence, where I needed to have the mic, how you maneuver yourself on the stage with monitors where you might get feedback. All of those things that I was learning, those were the personal endeavors that in my life that I was taking to try to help me to be a better MC.
Right, the fundamentals.
Right, fundamentals, exactly. So what happened was I would say our mentor. It was never a leader of that group, but it was an elder who was our mentor. She knew the program director at WBAI.
What was the mentor's name? What was
may she rest in peace, Rosalind Blair. She knew the program director of WBAI.
Yeah.
And the program director had expressed to her that, he's got a guy named John or Jay Smooth. And he was like, we're trying to get a show started. We actually have a show started, but we're looking for interns. Because what the idea of the show was it was more than just a hip hop show. It had its post to the political, scene, and it had its post to the streets, and had the idea was to kind of try to incorporate all of that.
It was like community minded,
right? Community, because it's community radio, right? Because it's community radio,
right?
So he said he needed interns, and she said, well, she immediately thought of me. So she brought that to me, and she gave me the guy's number, and I spoke to him, and he was like, he liked me, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna introduce you to Jay Smooth, and you're gonna work with him. Wow. So yeah, I introduced me to Jay Smooth. Jay Smooth had no idea what I was doing. I was still going to the studio.
Right.
I was still recording. I was still learning my craft. I was still writing. I was still doing all of that.
So he didn't know you as an MC, or you didn't
know me. Yeah. I was an intern. I was just an intern.
That's amazing.
He already had a co-host who was Z Black, my man Trevor Baldwin, Z Black. He already had a co-host, and so what they basically needed me for was to kind of be the guy on the street. And so what we were doing at the time, we were going to political conventions and all of that. So I got myself versed in knowing how to network and politic with people with that. And and that's basically what we were doing. And we were helping him put his snippets and bits together for his show.
Would he do remotes? Like he would record stuff that would then be used on the show?
Right. This guy, Jay Smooth, he actually knew how to get on the machine and cut and splice and tape the machine. And I used to just watch him like, I want to know how to do that.
That's
amazing. And they tried to show me, but I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it, but they tried to show me. But this is what he was doing. Real old school. Yes. They didn't have digital. They only had the reel to reel. And he was taping it and splicing it and right there. So this is what he was doing, to prepare for his show.
Right.
And so he had a co-host, but I was there when the show was there. And I would just, sit back and kick it. Sit back, kick it. Be there when the show, and I would, go for a little bit of input whenever they did. And I just played my position. And then one day, we were just playing around. And Z Black used to want to freestyle all the time on the radio. So I'd be listening to him, and I'd be like, but I just keep my mouth shut, and I would be listening, and he'd be doing his thing. And then, one day they asked me, and I don't really even know if they asked or if I was like, can I kick something? And they was like, yeah, go ahead. So I kicked it, and they was like, and so from then on, I became the guy that was known as like the poet laureate. So whenever he introduced me, he was like, we got the poet laureate in the house, and so that's how that came about. Now
they weren't calling you Mr. Voodoo either, though.
No, it was Agu.
Yes,
I was Agu. I would spit Mr. Voodoo in my verse, but for all intents and purposes, it was Agu. So Trevor had to was going to college. I was a little bit older than Trevor. I was already in college, but Trevor was going to college. He was going to Morehouse, and he couldn't.
Yeah, so he had to leave.
He had to leave,
right.
And turned to me and was like, "Oh, it's on you now." You know, but before we left, we made a pact and a covenant, like, yo, whatever you do, you know, I want to be a part of that. He was like, I want to be your man. Whatever it is you do, he was like, you know, you the only guy really, you know, I freestyle or whatever. But he was like, yo, you made me shut up. I ain't right.
So he really believed it. He really believed in you.
Yeah. So
dope.
He was like, yo, you know, I'm gonna go to college. I'm gonna do my thing or whatever. But he was like, yo, I really would like to manage you and, you know, be the guy that is the, you know, your point man. So I was like, yeah, no problem. We could do that. So he left the co-host position to me. Jay was cool with it, and then it just took off from there.
By now, how long have you guys been doing the show? Cause it's been
it was about a year, maybe a little more than a year, maybe, right? Because this was like, I remember Trev still being in high school, and he was in his last year, so it was a whole year, and then after that year is when he left. And I went to co-host, if I get it correct. It's a long time.
Sure.
But
it's a long time ago, yeah.
So I hosted that show for a few years. I hosted that show for a few years. And we did from about, I guess it was like 91, 92 to about 94, 95.
Wow.
And basically what I was doing was, Fortress hadn't come about yet.
Right, Fortress Entertainment. Charlemagne's
label, and his people's.
Right.
Fortress hadn't come about yet. I knew that in some way, somehow, I was going to be in a position to put something out, but I wasn't sure how I was going to do it.
Right.
So the radio was an outlet for me, not only as a co-host, but as a rapper, and also to be able to meet some people, because at that time, college radio and independent radio was a very important part
so you would have
of
guests,
the puzzle. Right. So we had guests. People
who came through.
People often solicited to come through. I mean, I can tell you. Everyone I can think of at the time that was dope. We had Wu-Tang Clan, we had AZ, we had we never got to have Nas, and we never got to have Big, but Big interview on the phone. He called in. We had Das Effects, we had Tretch, we had Fugees.
Wow.
We had, because it was a thing. They needed the promotion. It was a lot. It was a smaller network then.
Right.
And it was a lot harder to get your shit off.
Right. And commercial radio in New York
wasn't always there.
Right.
Hot 97 didn't go to a complete rap format until the early to mid 90s.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So before that, they were playing dance music.
You're right. Yeah.
BLS did not have rap except for Fridays and Saturday nights, and they would flip flop. Often it would be Marley Marl or Mr. Magic, you know. And Hot 97, 98.7 Kiss, had Red Alert and Chuck Chill Out with alternating Saturday night, and that was it.
So if you just heard those nights, that's it.
And then the local community and independent radio stations, which were on during the week, but also very, very late.
Right. So what was the time for the show? Was the Underground Railroad, right?
The Underground Railroad was on I believe it was like Wednesdays, I believe, something like that. It was during the week, but it was one of the only shows that was like right there. We did from like 10 to midnight.
Nice.
So we were right there. We had
a great
good
time slot.
Right, we had a good slot.
Because the following night would obviously be Stretch and Bobbito.
And then you had Radioactive, Martin Moore,
yes.
You know, and those guys played a very important role in my thing too.
Big time.
So we had a little network, and these people were coming through all the time. And then what they would do is they would be like, okay, we're going to let you freestyle. And you want to get a cipher going with our poet laureate. So I would have a lot of times I rhymed with these cats, I rhymed, and it's some very memorable times. I remember one time Jay-Z came in.
Yes.
This was the day that I had L with me, Jay came, but Das Effects was coming. So Das Effects, a lot of people don't realize this, but there was a time that Das Effects was way bigger than Jay-Z.
Yeah, definitely.
So nobody was paying Jay-Z any mind. And he was a little bit annoyed with that because he had a thing in his mind that I'm way better than these cats.
Right.
And so he was annoyed with that, but and he didn't want to rhyme. But they was like, yo, come on, we're going to get a little freestyle. And that's how that freestyle with him came about.
Yeah. Jay-Z, Mr. Voodoo, and L Swift.
Right,
yes, classic.
Yeah. That's how that came about. He was real reluctant, but the reluctancy came from the fact that he didn't feel that he was getting his just deserves, because nobody really was we were interested, and I knew him as a neighborhood kid.
Okay.
I knew him as a neighborhood kid. His man, right hand man, Tata, is the dude Tilo, who I was telling you about earlier.
Really? Okay.
That's his little brother. So may he rest in peace. So there was a familiarity there, right, but we weren't really familiar with each other like that. But I knew him as a neighborhood kid.
Sure. I mean, and this is even before probably Reasonable Doubt, or right when Reasonable Doubt was coming out.
Way before, yeah.
You guys rhymed over Dead Presidents, I think, right?
It was The Meaning of Life.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And he was doing it was Life and Times of, right?
Yes.
A lot of that Life and Times, a lot of the references he makes is to that era when he was really still hustling and trying to, so we knew, but we weren't really familiar with it. I'm kind of like the guy who know his peoples, but I don't really, so he had a funny feeling about that, but
that's interesting. Yeah,
me and Das, the funny thing about the Das situation is that they had lined me up with Das because they were dying for Das to hear me, and they was trying to put me in a position to maybe do something with them. Mm-hmm. But it never came about because they had gotten distracted. The success had took them to another place. But they would still, when we would go to functions, they would still show love or whatever. But this was the way that I got my name in the mix. So when I go to do showcases and things like that, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's that kid from the radio. I know you. And even other artists will remember me. Yeah, I remember you. You dope. So
yeah,
that
a lot of people were listening too.
Right,
So that's invaluable airtime.
Exactly. So that's how I became immersed in the radio. We were not commercial, so there wasn't really a feeling of a need to compete on that level. We all had a different lane, and each one of us had audiences that appreciated that, because you can get the same thing in a different flavors. It's like having ice cream in different flavors, and it was appreciated, and we had a little family, and I would go over and hang out at Mayhem or Martin Moore's show, or I would go and hang out at Stretch and Bob's show.
Yeah, Mayhem and Martin Moore was NYU, right?
That was NYU, yeah. And you know, and there were a lot of other local radio stations that I would go to. That I'm Kwame V, I believe, up in Harlem. You know, that would show love, and I would go and show love also. You know, so that's how
it's such a great, rich history of that era of college radio in New York City.
New York City, yeah.
And of course, I mean, Stretch Armstrong and Bobbito are titans of that, and are well documented. And
you know, and the funny thing about that was that I didn't feel like I had accomplished anything as an MC until I was able to get on the Stretch and Bob show, right? Because they was held in such high esteem, right? As the underground, like they broke art. They were breaking these you know, phenomenal artists. You know, they were breaking guys like Nas. They were breaking guys like Pharoah Monch. You know, they broke Mobb Deep. All of these guys.
No,
so we listening to the tapes as fans. In my mind, I'm saying, I got to get on there. The only way that I'm gonna be legitimate as an MC is to get on there. Now, I never in a lifetime would have thought that I would have been in a position to develop a relationship with both of them. You know, it was kind of like a fan looking back, like just wishing that he could be there. But when I got myself into the position as a co-host on a radio show and started networking and finally got a chance to meet them, you know, it was a special thing for me.
And they can be, they're very open, warm guys.
They're
really cool people, down to earth guys.
Yeah.
But I mean, would you say that they broke natural elements in Mr. Voodoo like the same way that, obviously, you know, each of those artists that came through their doors had different trajectories of their career, Nas and so on and so forth. But I mean, I think that so many people all over the world came to know Natural Elements and Mr. Voodoo through Stretch and Bobbito because those tapes got around so much. And the freestyles and the radio promo songs because were so legendary too.
You know, and it's funny because we never really looked at it like that. We just saw it as we were just doing our thing. We were doing what we loved. What we felt blessed to be able to do is to have that avenue, to have that channel where we could feed them, and they would play the stuff because you know they would get tapes all the time.
I bet.
They would never. A lot of those tapes never saw the light of day. But to be able to come to them and know that because they respect what you do, that your reputation preceded, and they knew that. They didn't even question if it was something that they're giving us, we know it's going to be quality. But we didn't take that. We took that for granted, though, in a sort of a way, because it was just natural to us. You know, it was just like, okay, well, let's do a promo for Bob. Let's do a promo for Mayhem. You know, like,
because that plays an equal role to Martin Moore and Mayhem.
We understood that there's an intimate relationship that needs to be maintained and to be, you know, to be developed between these guys, because they are going to be the ones that are going to play your stuff and really, you know, interact with you on a consistent level. You don't always have commercial radio back, but you know that as long as you stay consistent and you provide music that has good content, these guys are going to be there for you and going to support you. You know, because you come from there. You know. So that was a thing, and it was something that it was just something that we didn't really give a really deep, honest thought to, because it just was something that was there. I had known the guys, and we had developed that relationship.
How often did you guys go up there? Was it a pretty consistent thing over those years, the mid-90s, late 90s?
Well, we always tried to do things in terms of releases and plans and runs, right? So there were stretches where we wouldn't go, we wouldn't be around, you know. But what we were doing was, it seems like a lot because of the fact that it wasn't just me at that time. Right. So when we put out a Mr. Voodoo release, you know, maybe 3 months or so down the line, they might do a Swigger, you know, or they might do a L Swift, or you know, maybe 3 or so months, and then in between that, you have all of the people soliciting us for stuff to do, Lyricist Lounge, you know, even Stretch and Bob, you know, they had the little thing, and then we did the Bus Mine single.
Of course, Paper Chase, Bus Mine on Dolo Records.
On Dolo Records, you know, with Stretch. And so it just seemed that way because we were pretty active. Right. But
so then that kind of really goes into really the origin story of Natural Elements too, really, I get, in a way, right? If you don't mind, if we just kind of venture down that path just a little bit, just for the sake of clarity, because you know, there's Fortress Records or Fortress Entertainment, and then there's Natural Elements, which they have sort of coinciding stories, but it's like, you know, each of the artists is kind of their own individual too, and has done a bunch of solo stuff, and but leading up to that point, because there was like a kind of a Fortress family too that was being sort of marketed.
It's funny because when I first started rhyming, I had this idea. You know, going back to the X-Clan thing again, you know, they had Black Watch. So I had this idea for something called Black Force. And I was drawing from me being into Star Wars and all of that. Instead of it being the Force, I was saying, oh, no, it's the Black Force. You know, so you know, we were from there. We were playing around with that from that era, and I had been rhyming, and I had said something about natural elements, and you know, Shaw was like, "Yo, I like that, natural elements." He was like, "Yeah," and we kept that in mind. And then what happened was that it wasn't a group; it just became more of a clique. It kind of morphed into its own thing. So by the time the idea for the group came, you know, we had already been coining the phrase "natural elements." We had already been saying that everything here is natural. It's no gimmicks. It's you know, strictly lyrics, no gimmicks, none of that. It's all organic before they started saying organic. But it's natural.
So it's more of a concept before it became a group.
Concept before it was a group, right? You know, so it was a concept that was there. And then what happened was when I came out with the mentality that I got all this talent, you know, sitting here, and I'm sitting amongst all of these dudes. I need to bring them along with me. They were like family anyway. We spent every weekend together doing this
in the studio.
You know, Tim was my schoolmate. Dante was my schoolmate.
Yeah, these are like real friends.
We are friends. We were just, you know, we hung out and everything. So I was like, I need to bring these guys with me. So that actually, because these is very intricate stories, but that's actually how I met Ka. I met Ka through school. Ka was a wild, you know, rah-rah, and I used to be like, yo, who is this dude, man? Come on. You know, but he was a wild, you know, dude from Brownsville, rah-rah, blah, 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 you know, so I was like, and I'm more of a laid back, you know, and I'm just looking like, you know, like, But, yo, in the school, they knew that I rhymed, you know, I mean, they you know, it just got around because Kwame Via had a radio show there, so I would go in and I would
at Brooklyn Community College,
at City College,
City College,
yeah. And so Actually, I went from BMCC to City.
Yeah,
So,
gotcha.
right. So, he had a show there, and people were getting familiar with me, and people was, you don't know who he is, you know, that's the cat, blah, 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 blah. Oh, word, because people it was small, and people really had their ear to it.
Yeah.
So, Ka came up to me one day, and he knew I was rhyming. He was like, yo, I know you doing your thing. He's like, I do my thing too. I was like, word. He was like, yeah, man, it'd be cool if you know, just let me kick something for you. You know, like, it would surprise me because he came like real, like, you know, humble, like, and it just surprised me because I'm used to him being a dude like, nah, fuck that, you know.
Right.
So he came to me and he approached me and I was like, yeah, go ahead, man. And he came and I was like, yo, I like that. I saw something. I liked it. And I said, yo, you know what? Come with me. Come up to the studio. Come with me. And I brought him up there, and from then on, that was that.
So what was the origin of Nightbreed? Did that exist at that time?
Nightbreed was his man. It was not something that existed initially. For Ka, he started off, I believe, and don't take my word for this, solo.
Right.
But as he saw that we were splintering off and creating the groups and all of that stuff, he kind of looked to his man to bring his man the same way I was looking to bring my people up with him.
Cool.
So his man, Odd Bro, may he rest in peace, he was a dude that was Ka's friend for a long time.
I see, yeah.
And they had an affinity, and they were kick rhymes back and forth and joke about it, and they decided, yo, he told him, yo, I'm up at the studio, let's do this for real.
Is this Kev? Is that the same person?
Kev. Yeah, Kev.
Oh, wow.
We called him Odd Bro.
Well, because on the Natural Elements, that sort of, or that Fortress EP, he goes by that, and then on Nightbreed, it's Kev. I figured it might be the same person, just trying to clarify that.
It's Kev.
Yeah.
And so...
I'm sorry he passed.
He passed. There's a tragic car accident a couple years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So he brought him up, and they started doing the Nightbreed thing.
Dope.
Right.
Yeah, that record is fantastic too.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Another
and they had an
Fortress.
energy. They had an energy.
Yes.
And that's what leads me to what I'm getting to with the Natural Elements thing.
Of course.
Is that Ka had an energy. And I think what Ka was added to it was that I'm a laid back dude, and he added that So I saw that energy, and I said, you know what, we need to have that like fire water balancing thing,
dynamic,
dynamic. You know, so I started telling him, yo, come, I need you to do a hook for me. Come on, let's go perform. Let's do this, that, and the third.
So you guys were starting to do shows together,
right? We do shows, and when I do a show, I'd be like, yo, kick something. Let him freeze. Let him do it. You know, so that was the way that I introduced Ka to the world, and Ka introduced us to Kev, and brought him in, and then likewise they introduced Nightbreed to the world.
Yeah, amazing.
Ka's first intention, I think, was maybe to be a soloist, but then when he saw the way that the group was starting to take off, he decided that he would bring his man in, and they would do Nightbreed.
Yeah, I love "Long Time Coming" was my joint on that song. Such a great song. Yeah, they have. It's definitely like a slightly different vibe from Natural Elements. It's a little darker, grittier.
Grittier. Yeah, and that deals with, you know, where they from, and a lot of the stuff. You know, Ka and Kev hail from Brownsville, and you know Brownsville has the reputation. They say it never ran, never will, but it has a crazy reputation, and I think it reflected in the music that they were doing. He always what he's doing now is exactly what he always wanted to do.
And it's so amazing.
But it wasn't that they wasn't ready for that at that time.
Sure, no,
you know,
that's just of the era.
It wasn't. So but
I love that the dude has continued a career. That warms my soul to know that this guy got embraced and is doing records, and he comes out of that out of Natural Elements world. You know. I think that's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So that was it. That was the thing. So when the Natural Elements, by the time the Natural Elements group came about, we had already had a clique,
right,
a concept. I had already been bringing the fellas and the guys around wherever I would go. Let them rhyme.
So were you the first out the gate to do shows and kind of stand on your own?
Yeah. I was the first one out the gate. But the idea was that I was going to be the first one, and then they would do a lot of subsequent releases.
Right.
You know, it was kind of no real game plan. It was just kind of throw something out there and see what sticks. Right. What they didn't bank on was the response we would get. We would get from the singles, like the ones that I
come off hard.
Out, you know. So so that's how the group came. And then what happened was we was eventually approached by Dante Ross.
Okay.
Yeah, good old Dante Ross. Peace, man.
Yeah, peace to Dante.
And he
so this is what have your singles already come out?
The singles were already out.
All right.
Singles were already
Come Off Hard and Lyrical Tactics.
Lyrical Tactics didn't come out yet.
All right. So
this was before Lyrical Tactics. Hemlock was actually supposed to be the next single after Come Off Hard. We weren't supposed to do the Fortress EP. We weren't supposed to do the Fortress compilation. And then when we did do the Fortress compilation, Hemlock was supposed to be on that compilation. I held off and held on to that song because we were receiving solicitations from other places. Right. So it caused a rift. They were pissed off. They was like, "What you mean you like that? What, you crazy? What you mean?" And in retrospect, I can respect that. I really shouldn't have held on to that song, because if I had released it at that point where there was a wave, it would have been a wrap, you know, because there was a lot of serious talk when people heard that song. Initially, I played Hemlock. For Hemlock,
yeah, it's a great song.
When I initially played it as a demo on the Martin Moore show.
Nice,
right? As a demo, I gave it to him, if I'm correct. It may have been Jay Smooth, I'm not sure. But I can remember specifically giving it to Martin.
Right.
And he played it. And when they heard it, they was like, "Yo, is this the next single?" I was like, I don't know. It was just a demo at the time. I don't know, man. He was like, "Yo, hold that thought, give it to me." And he started running everywhere with it. He was trying to Martin went in for me. I mean, Martin Moore was really trying to and I gotta give him forever props for that. Cause that was one dude that he was like, "Yo, I'm gonna," he spoke to Trev and he was like, "Yo, let's work together, bro." So, but
did he take that to Dante Ross, or how did
Dante wound up hearing the stuff? Yeah. Dante wound up hearing what we were doing. Dante was hearing the promos. He was listening to the radio, and he was asking, "Yo, who are these cats?"
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And with his relationship with Bob and Stretch and all of these dudes, they was like, "Oh, that's Mr. Boo. That's our goo." "Oh, word?" Well, so one thing, he would come to the shows and stuff, and he would see, with the Lyricist Lounges, and he was doing his thing with, Brand New being in them, and he had his
Electro Records,
and then he had a situation that he was trying to work with Def Jam.
Okay.
So his idea was it was going to be us, and it was going to be Trigger and Smooth.
Yes.
Right. So he came to us and said, "Listen, let's do a demo deal. I want the three of you, Ka, and L, to get into the studio and do some tracks." So Dante is directly responsible for the formation formally of a group called Natural Elements.
Wow, amazing. Right?
Because what Dante did was he said, I'm a put y'all, three of y'all in the studio. The original members was me, L, and Ka. Because whenever I did shows or wherever we went, it was me, L, and Ka. It was me, L, and Ka that he heard on Hemlock. L and Ka did the chorus.
Really? Oh, right?
Okay. Ka did I Got It Hand Up, Kid.
L did
I Got It Locked Down.
Ah, right. I didn't know it was those two guys.
Those two guys. And all I did was come in and say, taste the hemlock, y'all. Taste the hemlock. So he saw us at the shows. He saw us performing together. He saw the chemistry. He was like, yo, y'all need to go in there and do some songs together. Let's see how that comes out. So we went in the studio and we recorded some songs. We recorded a song called Triple Team, which was the first three-man weave. We recorded a Mortal Kombat, I think, or something like that. It had Mortal Kombat samples in it. And then we recorded the Life Ain't Fair. We recorded about maybe, I'm altogether, maybe I could have been 5 or 6 songs. I mean, we had a bunch of songs there that we did.
Classic demos, though.
Yeah. And so that demo, that came about because of a demo deal with Def Jam. Right. Unfortunately, I think what happened was there was politics involved, and the Smooth and the Trigger had a big single that year with the Broken English or Broken Language.
Right.
And Broken Language, and they wanted to ride that wave. But what happened was we kept that momentum. So out of that was another thing also that kept the Hemlock thing from being released, is we held it back to do the deal with Def Jam. When that fell through, they came back and said, okay, Vu, let's do it. Let's go. That's when Lyrical Tactics and Shine, and then Hemlock.
Well, it's interesting now you say that too. Lyrical Tactics and Shine do sound a little like a few years later than Hemlock. The style of song and production.
Right, exactly. It was, and so we
amazing.
So that and then with Shine actually introduced the world to the concept and the idea and the group of Natural Elements. Because that was the first time it was actually put out on vinyl as a formal release. Before that, it was just us as a demo deal, and we had put that out. I think it's on there. It should say it. If it's not, it should say Essence and thing. But I believe it says Natural Elements.
Well, yes, it does. Yeah, well, it's produced by Charlemagne for Natural Elements, but written. I mean, all the writers are attributed here. Mr. Voodoo, L. Swift, A. Bud, and Essence. Right.
And that's the first time you see a Natural Elements on a release. That would be the first time accredited as Natural Elements on a release. And so that was the formal beginning of it. And what it was going to be me, L.A., and Essence.
Interesting, okay.
It was going to be, she was a member, and she was going to be a part of the group. But Essence didn't. We were trying to move towards getting a deal. And Essence was like, I think we should stay independent. I think we should keep putting our own stuff out and keep doing it the way that we're doing it.
Well, Lyrical Tactics must have been a pretty successful record. It was at the height of those 12 inches, but this was a hot seller. I do not doubt.
It actually, and what had happened with it, and what had happened was that it was building on a lot of the stuff that we were doing that really wasn't even being released. It was those demos. That stuff, people don't understand how much that stuff really helps you, but the demos, the promos, all of that, they were building up a thing where it was like, okay, when are they going to put something out? When are they going to
but you know what, you say that, and when you look at the actual 12-inch and it was considered Natural Elements now with the inclusion of A. Bud and Essence, I think for the cats that were really up on the demos and they were circulating in this kind of tape trading circuit too outside of New York, a lot of people I think initially associated Natural Elements with like just you and L. Swift or you and Khan, and it was like it sort of existed in its early phase, and this mystique of these like basically songs are just recorded off the radio.
Right,
Unless you were an industry insider like a Dante or Martin Moore or Stretch Armstrong and Bobbito, where you physically handed someone a cassette. It had to come from Mr. Voodoo or Charlemagne or someone like that.
Yeah,
so there's something really interesting in the history of the group that way, too.
Yeah, and it's a lot of that, 6 degrees of separation thing going on, where this one knows that one, and they come across this because of that guy.
Right.
I know the guy that knows that guy, it just kept going on.
Well, and you're a player in the game too because of your involvement in the radio.
Yeah,
I mean, you're a personality where you have a certain level of access to, which so adds to that.
The first release was kind of like, it came out of nowhere. But the second, by the time we got to that second release, I think they were ready, and there was an audience there that was ready, that would consume and go get it, and so it did well. It did do well. I was surprised. I was surprised, but it did do that. I wound up getting the Source Hip Hop Quotable thing on that thing. And
I know I pulled out I have a box of old sources right here, and I tried, before you came over, I tried to find the actual issue that had it, but I could not. I swear I went through a million of them, and
that made a lot of people mad. They were like, "Who is that? How did he get it?" And my man can't get one. You have so on and so forth, got a hip hop quotable, but my man can't get a quotable. What's up with that? But I let that. That's just a hate. On a competitive level, people.
Well, I mean, you earned it for a reason.
Yeah, and it was a big deal back then because it was a respectability that you had as an MC for you to even be considered a source, hip hop quotable.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
So it was a big deal for us, because we felt kind of vindicated when a lot of people didn't really. The label and the record industry machine didn't really see it. We come a little something. We don't have no pull, no juice with anybody, but just there was an appreciation on that level for what we was doing that day. The guy that did it was like, when he told me, it was Riggs.
Yeah.
And it was Riggs, and it was another guy whose name but it was another guy. They were both at the Source, and the people was like, "Who is this? Why y'all putting them on?" And they was like, "Hold on, just listen." And they listened, and they was like, "Okay." So
nice.
But
it was for Lyrical Tactics.
Lyrical Tactics,
nice. Yeah.
And so that was a big deal. And
let me ask you this too, because a long time ago, a friend of mine in Virginia, his name is KJ. He's a good dude. He gave me he had a cassette of the songs which would later come out very recently as a New York Straight Talk. Right. Was that what would have been an album that you would have done on Def Jam? Because that was like the rumor I remember way back then. Was that ever a thing? Or is, I'm not trying to put you on blast.
No. You know what happened with the Def Jam deal? What was happening was people was listening to the people at Def Jam and Dante and them. They was listening to the songs, and they was like, "Who's that guy? Who's that guy?" You know what I'm saying? Like, who's that guy? Oh shit, I like that. Who's that guy?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I recently watched an interview that Ka had with the Red Bull Academy, and he had went into this long discussion about how he had felt he was like the weak link of the group, because here you got on one side these incredible lyricists, and then there's me, and he was like, I always felt like I was, but that was because what was happening at that time was people had remembered me from the radio, from showcases. I was everywhere in the Lyricist Lounge, and they looked at me as the lead guy, because I'm the one that kind of like was bringing all of the people with me. But and so Dante had this thing, and but he couldn't do a soloist.
He needed a group.
He needed a group.
Okay, gotcha.
but what he did was he had said to me, or rather to my manager, I'm gonna come back to y'all. He's like, I'm gonna come back to y'all. Do your thing, but I'm gonna come back to y'all.
Okay.
When I'm in a position where I could, I'm gonna come back to y'all. So that's kind of where the rumor came from. But there was never a point in time where Def Jam had ever came to me.
Okay.
Those songs were done on a demo as an idea for a possible album. But we were everywhere. We went everywhere.
But it was an independently made demo.
But it was an independently made demo.
Gotcha.
We circled. Those are joints that I did at my man Vidal Gorin's house. Charlemagne had he didn't have the MPC yet. He had a Casio synthesizer sampler, and he put everything on the keys. And we did a little on a Tascam tape, and we had a mic and a little thing. And I went in there and I knocked those out. But we had knocked those out with the idea that this was going to be towards an album or a demo. So the tape was circulating and the demo circulated. We gave it to the labels, but we also gave it to our friends in the radio and all of that in the system because we wanted to create a buzz.
Right.
And that was the best way to create a buzz. And that's how those demos came about.
Yeah, I always wondered that too, because they never really. I mean, just recently, Chop Herring, put them out, and it's great that they saw the light of day because very few people heard them, and even more so rarer than like the joints that you taped off the radio of Natural Elements too.
Yeah. A lot of people heard them. A lot of people heard them. A lot of people that don't want to admit that they heard them.
I'm sure it was a hot commodity in New York getting that tape,
and a lot of things that I was saying on those tapes wound up being in a lot of other people's lyrics and stuff like that. And I mean, I don't, it's cool, it's all good because I understand, and I took it as a flattery,
really,
it wasn't
people. From that.
Well, you kind of hear it,
right.
You kind of hear it, but you don't hear it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Like you couldn't bite like that. You couldn't take a person's, but you couldn't take a person's lyrics verbatim, but you could take an idea. You could take a concept. You could take a subject matter. You could take anything and flip it the way that you want to flip it.
Right.
So, but
yeah,
I know that because I've gotten into conversations with some people, and they've told me, "Yo, I remember when you said this, and I remember when you said that, in the third," and so I know, and I'm happy that was appreciated and that influence was there. But yeah, I heard it. I hear it. Because it's my work.
You're the author.
I hear it, but I don't make it. I don't make it a thing where it's like, the dude bit me or whatever. I just take it as we are MCs. We appreciate what each other's done, and if you look and you think that my stuff is so dope that it can influence the way that you put your stuff out, then I'm happy about that. If it was a verbatim biting lyrics thing, then I have to come different thing. But I was influenced, and I was influenced by other guys. It was guys that said things and did things a certain way that influenced me and made me rhyme that way.
Well, yeah, and there is a difference between like repurposing a classic hip hop line and making it cool and your own style, and then just straight up like biting someone's verse.
Exactly.
You did that masterfully with like some Big Daddy Kane stuff too. I think when the pen hit the paper, I think you might have done that. But there's an art to doing that that's dope. It's actually a compliment to the.
Yeah, because
it's a classic line too. Everyone knows it, so it's like, oh shit, you just flipped that Kane thing or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And so it's important that we make that connection, And it's important even with our peers that we make that connection, It's not an ego thing for me, because I'm comfortable with my skill set and my skill level. You know, to say, okay, I was influenced by what this guy did, and I was influenced by what this guy said. And sometimes it's my peers, it's people I rap with that said, yo, you know what, that I like that. I'm gonna do it. You know. So it's nothing to do that, and it's not to take away from anybody. You know, to do that. You know, like because we have to be able to make that connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And especially in order for this, for it to progress, and what we do, because it's dissipating.
Yes, absolutely, big time.
You know, it's dissipating, and we have to be able to get beyond that and make the connection with each other, to keep this thing running.
Well, speaking of lyrics too, there's been a lyric of yours that I think I may have misinterpreted for many years that I wanted to ask you. It was on Paper Chase, which was so speaking of Natural Elements too, that was a proper single on Dolo Records, Stretch Armstrong's label, Paper Chase, and Bust Mine.
Yeah, Bust Mine and Paper Chase.
Right. And on Paper Chase, you said it was something like the more coke I conjure, something lamping in Culturama. What is that? You know,
oh yeah.
What is the word that you? Because I heard that, and then I had a tag I did these underground video compilations called Culturama. Yeah. It's all because of a lyric that you said. Like even my Instagram thing for years, I had a website called Culturama.org. That's not what you said.
Nah. You know what it is? I said the more coke conjure, get me closer to the lamp, and then Cochabamba. Cochabamba is Cochabamba is the place that Alejandro Sosa from Scarface resided. That was his villa, his village.
Right.
And I lifted that as on a reference from Scarface. I wanted to be as large as Alejandro Sosa.
Yes, that's amazing.
So the more coca I conjure, the closer I get to lamping and Cochabamba.
Incredible,
you know. So you know that was what that line.
For all these years, man, since that record came out, I was like, oh, what's Culturama? That shit's so dope. I gotta flip that somehow. Yeah. And it was just misinterpreting the lyric. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I love that.
That's what that is. But that was also a time where we were the formative Natural Elements. It was still a formative time for us.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because what happened was after the Lyrical Tactics single, and they heard Shine, people started saying, okay, so when are we going to get a Natural Elements album? When are we going to get a Natural Elements single?
Yeah,
when are we going to get this? It's a big question, because up to that point, it was after the demo deal, it was gun ho with the solo thing. But the people loved Shine so much because, like you said, it just came out of left field.
Right.
They were used to me, L, and Ka, but when I came with A, who was an impressive lyricist,
right.
And then when I came with Essence, who was an impressive lyricist, they hadn't heard, and they didn't even know we had a female in the clique.
Yeah, that was a big, big
so
addition.
They was like, whoa, you know, this could be like you know, we need to hear more.
Right.
But you know, as I said earlier, Essence didn't agree with the direction of the group, so she left and did her own thing. So that left me, L, and A.
Where was Ka at this point in time?
Ka was doing Nightbreed.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Ka decided that he was going to branch off and do the group thing with Kev, with Nightbreed. So and that goes back to what I was saying, where he felt that he was the weak link in the group, and he felt more comfortable in his own space and in his own lane.
Yeah,
now, we strongly, of course, disagreed with that, because Ka brought a level of energy there to the group, and it sometimes gets boring to hear three people that rap the same.
You guys have a similar energy.
You know, and the thing about it, and the thing about it is that even, you know, with me and L, there's a sort of a complexity to our lyrics, but Kai has a raw simplicity that's dope, and it gives more. It kind of roughs the edges on it, you know, and makes it really sharper. So we was trying to get him to explain that to him, but I think he really felt more comfortable outside of that with his man Kev.
Right. Was he on Mayday?
Yeah, he was on Mayday.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and he was on
now
Mayday.
Come to think, because there was another voice in that too.
Yeah.
It's a great song.
Always,
great song.
yeah. And so and this is what we did. Like I believed, like I said, that with the talent that I have, I can incorporate it into what I'm doing. And at the same time that I'm giving myself light, I can give light and allow the people, the talent around me and the people that I care about to get their light and propel them and let them do it. And I always said, you know, what you do with the time and the light I give you is what you do. It's yours. So I give it up to you. Let's make the most of it. Do the best that you can. You understand? Because it's not about just me shine. You know, I shine, you shine. We forever SHINE.
Yes.
You know, so that's what that whole thing came about, and the Natural Elements thing came about, and then ultimately it just wound up being me, L and A.
Right. So I mean, getting into the I guess maybe the second or third chapter of Natural Elements is really when you guys kind of venture into this deal with Tommy Boy, and there's finally a prospect of an album and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of a new era of production. I feel like even hip hop is starting to evolve as you get closer to the 2000s too. It's the early 2000s now. Yeah. So it's funny. Even Charlemagne's style of production is updated, and you know, technology is changing. All that stuff, you know, factors into it.
Yeah, Y2K was a big deal.
Yeah.
As we moved more towards Y2K, we began to see there was something going on with the business. There was a shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the way things were happening and the way things was running. We no longer could be guaranteed to have radio behind us the way that we did, even with the label like Tommy Boy, with the rich history that it has, because the machine was changing.
Right.
It was becoming more capitalistic driven type of a machine.
Sure.
Where you needed money and resources to actually move a project and make a project happen. This was one of the obstacles and one of the major hurdles that we had as a group. First of all, trying to get a label to understand what they have, right? So what kind of a group you have. We're not built on gimmicks. We're not built on any of those things. We're built on a vibe. We're built on lyricism. We're built on creativity. And our fans, our fan base, and the people who have been supporting us, that's what they're looking for.
Yep, it's just pure talent, vibe, and which I guess to the typical industry asshole, I mean, for lack of a better word, they might not know how to sell something like
exactly.
that.
And that was the problem with Tommy Boy, is how do we market this?
Right.
You see, we don't. There was an issue where they truly didn't understand or know what to do with a product like ours, because the only selling point that they had was the quality of the music that was given to them. So nobody was doubting the quality of the music that was given to them. What they were doubting was, are people going to gravitate towards this simply because of quality, you know? And so, you know, getting ahead of the story, that was the issue that we had with Tommy Boy. When you with the label and the industry machine, they need to feel that they have something that they need to have a selling point.
I know, but at the same time, I mean, they like picked up Screwball at the same time, and Screwball it's not very similar to Natural Elements, but it's another vibe-oriented New York group. It's very vibe and production-oriented.
Yeah.
So, and they, granted, I don't know how well Tommy Boy handled that album. Probably not very well either.
And see, what happened with Screwball is they had created a controversy with that song about the mayor.
Oh, right.
Wanted to assassinate Giuliani.
Right.
So they had created a controversy that Tommy Boy could kind of ride with and be like, okay, well, this is the group that did that fuck you group, you know, that from New York, and this is what they do.
Yeah, we can work with this.
We can work with that.
Right.
But with Natural Elements, we wasn't really doing anything controversial. We were more artistic with our thing. And that was the sticking point for them. And that was what was a challenge, and has always it's worked for us, but it becomes a challenge when you are trying to maybe sell the group for a deal or a business, you know. And so with that being said, when we went into the group thing and we started doing the demos, as we were shopping the demos around to different labels, that was the issue. Even as a solo artist, I'm gonna tell you the truth, even in that era as a solo artist, they were like, he's dope, but I don't hear a hit. You know, so so the labels were saying, we're looking for a hit. We don't care, the album can be dope, but we need a hit. Illmatic was dope, but where was the hit? You see what I'm saying? Like, in terms of their idea of what a hit is. Because to me, every song on there was a hit. But to a record label, they're looking at it like, we need a hit.
Well, I mean, if you look at Nas's second album, that's probably
why it went that way. Exactly, because
like,
the label was like, we need a hit.
Yeah, and then even his subsequent records after that, there's always tried to be anchored by some kind of hit. So and dealing with the record label mentality, you know, and that the ethic that they had. That's what we were dealing with when we were trying to shop around. So when we get the question, yo, Voo, why you ain't never go here? Yo, Voo, why you ain't, you know, it's not that. We had people who were politicking for us. I'm sure you had champions in the industry.
Strong, hard. But the industry was still oriented on that. We need a hit. We want a hit. And it's not to blame them, because they're in it to make money. But I think that what record labels and what the industry as a whole tends to do is underestimate the intelligence of its audiences.
Oh, absolutely.
They underestimate
time and time again.
they underestimate the ability of the average listener to make a wise listening choice. This is why the machine and it works the way that it does now, because no one truly believes that the listener can discern, can make a wise choice if he's given proper options. So we inundated with the same thing, day in, day out, the same thing, the same 20 songs over and over and over again, based on that ethic, based on that mentality. What we offered and what we offered to the world as a group was maybe a fresh difference from all of that. You know, what we tried to convey was that there's nothing forced with us. We're not doing a radio song just because a label wants us to do a radio song. If we get a song and we feel the song and it creates that vibe, then that's just how it happens.
And Live It Up in 2 Tons is like that. They're great songs.
You know, the funny thing about that was that we had gotten together with the label, and the label was like, it's great, but we still need something. So we was
more than that.
Well, we didn't really have Live It Up yet,
right.
And we didn't have Live It Up. But what happened was we was like, huh. So we went back and we came out and when Charlemagne was there, Charlemagne was like, look, I got a beat, listen to it. So we listened to the beat, and I said, okay, this could possibly be the song. It didn't really, to me, I wasn't thinking about it with a radio vibe.
Right.
It could, but even with the hook, it was just like I said, yo, I be filling the cup, living it up. I drove, twist it up, I know, and we said, okay, and then A came with the thing, and we just all got together and we created the song. And even with that song, it was a vibe. It wasn't us. It wasn't us saying, yo, we need to do a radio song. We just said, yo, what can we spit to this? And he said, yo, I got something catchy, you know, and then boom. And then we came in with the lyrics like we always do. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it was just like, that was the challenge for us as the group when we got together. So when we were crafting these songs and we was doing these songs, we didn't have that in mind.
Right.
So we got the demo together, and the manager at the time, Trevor Baldwin, began to shop the demo around to different places. But he had one particular place that expressed a deep interest, and that was Tommy Boy. Now, what Tommy Boy had found out and what they had saw was there was this burgeoning underground scene.
Yes.
They were looking at what Raucus was doing.
Of course, yeah.
And they were looking and they were like, yo, we can create something similar to their model. So they began to seek out the groups and artists like Natural Elements, right. Screwball,
Jig Masters,
you know, all of those groups, they began to seek them out because they saw what was happening and in terms of, you know, the underground scene, how it was burgeoning at the time.
Right.
And so that was how we wound up on Tommy Boy. Tommy Boy gave us a very nice deal, very reasonable deal. They let us have ownership of our masters. And, you know, these were all good sticking points. Like, sure. Yeah, this is a great place to be. Right. You know, and for all intents and purposes, it was a great place to be. Everyone was easily accessible, always open. I was label mates with my childhood friend Mace. Nice. I couldn't get that. I couldn't. I was tickled to death about that because when I saw him on De La Soul, I was like, "Yo, is that? Oh man!" So I was like, I could, you know, every chance we get to meet up and we speak, it's always like a hours long conversation. So, you know, we got a history. So that was
because he even had something on that black label too, on Tommy Boy Black Label.
Yeah, he had something. Yeah, he had something going on with that. Yeah, and he would come through, right. And we would talk. You know, and that was one of the dudes. You know that was like he knew the group before he put the face to it. Oh, wow. So when I remember he told me, he was like, "Yo, that's you?" I was like, "Yeah, man, that's me." He was like, "Paper Chase?" I was like, "Yeah, I love that song. I love Paper. I love that song. I love that song." He was like, "Oh my, it's you." You know, so we was just tickled. I was like, "Yo, but yo, you De La Soul, man." You know, so we'd be back and forth like tickled about it. But so we was in a good, that it felt like a good place to be at. But like I said, Tommy Boy is a label just like any other label interested in moving units and moving records. And also Tommy Boy was at a time, was at a crossroads also. Definitely. It's a historical label. Right. And what happens sometimes when you have a label with a history, they sometimes begin to rest on their laurels. they don't feel sometimes that they need to put in the work.
Well, especially in that
somebody,
time,
right?
That era,
yeah,
too,
right.
Things were changing rapidly.
Things were changing, and now it was not a guarantee that you would have the same channels that you did before, because it was becoming more of a capital-driven type of atmosphere. So if you didn't have the money to surround the project and the resources and the people to work it, you might not never see the light of day.
Yeah.
So what we was so with Tommy Boy's, and I'm not. This is my opinion and more of my feeling about the situation. Tommy Boy kind of saw it like, but we're Tommy Boy. Why do we need to do that? Right. They know our history. They know our reputation precedes us. They know the quality of work that we don't put out no BS. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what personally, this is what I thought that they thought. So they didn't feel like they needed to do the work. They didn't think they needed to get somebody to get and to be in the ear of these program directors and all of that stuff, And that was the difference. Rawkus was doing that. You see? Yes, definitely. Rawkus was trying to, because they didn't have the history. They had the artists. Right. They had the talent, but they didn't have the history that Tommy Boy had. So they had to kind of hustle harder and, and maneuver to get their stuff played in different arenas and different areas.
Was there ever a Rawkus offer on the table too? Because you did the Lyricist Lounge. You were
Rawkus. They knew of us. I'm gonna tell you that there were a couple of places that we had. We had Loud. We had Loud on the table. We had Rawkus looking at us. But the thing about Rawkus was that Rawkus was crowded. Yeah. It was little did we know that Tommy Boy was about to get just as crowded as Rawkus was. Right. Because when we came, we were like one of the first artists that they had signed, and then they had just brought in a whole flood of artists afterwards, swooped on a lot. Right. So we got Loud, we got Rawkus. I got Loud as a soloist. I got Wild Pitch when they was doing as a soloist. I got Relativity. My man Peter Kang championed really hard. It's a funny story with him because he wanted to do sort of like this compilation album with a bunch of MCs. And I swear, I wish I had kept the tape. He gave me a beat tape. Really? And he gave me a beat tape because he was working with Common at that time. He gave me a beat tape of all these beats of this kid who was going to become someone very special real soon. So but I didn't care about it. I was like, I get beats from No ID, give them to me. Right. So I have this tape with these beats from No ID, but then he said, yo, I got another kid, man, and he's kind of nice, and I'm going to put his beats on here. And I was like, who? He was like, his name is Kanye. I was like, all right, give it to me. Right. And I have some of his earliest beats. Wow. And I could kick myself for not keeping that tape, But
it got lost over time?
Yeah, it just got lost over time. Yeah, but I had some of Kanye's earliest beats when he was working with No ID. Sure. And we were supposed to do that. Yeah, so that's a real, a little interesting side note there. And yeah, we had Relativity, we had Wild Pitch. And Wild Pitch was a big deal at the time because of Large Professor and Main Source and all of that. Yeah. So we was riding that wave. And Large Professor also was a cool dude who was familiar. And when we got a chance to meet him, I was just like, to be able to, the guys you looked up to, it was like at that time, that's all I really cared about. I didn't know the impact that I was having on the outside because all I was concerned with was whether the guys I looked up to was feeling my joint. And that's what fueled me to keep my stuff dope. It wasn't so much what the audience outside was going to say. I'm looking at this guy and he's dope. I gotta do something that's just as dope
those guys,
as what he's doing.
If those guys are approving it too, then most likely the audience around you are going to love it just as much.
Too, and it was funny because you know, a lot of guys were saying, yo, you writing music and you're writing your rhymes for your audience. You know, understand what I'm saying? You can't lose them. But at the same time, I was saying, yeah, but what good is that if my peers is like, yo, that's garbage. You want to be accepted by people who you respect, who've accomplished something, and who have set a standard that you want to get to. See what I'm saying? So in my mind, it was always, I got to do something ill that would make them go, oh, because I know that they've already set a standard that everybody else is kind of aspiring to get to or appreciate. So if I can make them appreciate that, then I know that I'm doing something right, you know? So that was another thing. And it's good and bad, because sometimes it might create a disconnect between you and the people who are supporting you. But it worked for me because it created a mystique about what it was that I was doing. You know? And people could hear in the music that I was honest and humble, and the humility that came with it. You know? But so we got into that deal with Tommy Boy, but it was tumultuous in a way that we had a lot of we had a lot of personal things that we were dealing with. L had personal things he was dealing with. A had personal things that he was dealing with. I was dealing with family, trying to be a father, newborn, and a husband, and at the same time I'm running wild trying to be this crazy rapper, and the two just didn't match. So it was a tumultuous time nonetheless, but we got it done. We got it done. We got it done. And that's when we came up with the album that was released in 1999 as a 10th anniversary.
So that essentially was the
Tommy Boy album. Most of the tracks on there were tracks that were going to be on the Tommy Boy album. And what happened was, when Tommy Boy, when we severed ties with Tommy Boy, they gave us our masters. So armed with our masters, we sat on them for a little while. We didn't understand the value of what it was that we had. So they stood just collecting dust for a long time.
Because then you did the stimulated thing not long after that too.
Right. Exactly. So you know, everyone knows the history of Natural Elements. With Tommy Boy, we go into another era, which is the new era. What happened was, all of us fell back. We didn't never really officially broke up in that sense. But Ace ventured off and started doing his own thing. Swigger ventured off and started doing his own thing. Me and Trev maintained a connection. But what happened was that while we was trying to politic, the Stimulated album actually came out while the group was still signed to Tommy Boy. What happened was, we was able to get a release. We was able to sign off on a release for me to do a solo venture. There was a clause in there that allowed us to do solo. We called it the Wu-Tang clause. That allowed us to be solo artists. But the label Tommy Boy had first option. So if we were solicited to do something solo, Tommy Boy had the first option to either match it or just say go ahead and do it. Tommy Boy opted to let me just go ahead and do it. It was a one-off. It was just a single. And it
great single. Nothing. Alchemist did the production.
And yeah, that's what you know, that's a funny thing too. So Dante said he's going to get back to us. From way back when we did the demo, Dante said, I'm going to get back to you. Finally, he got himself in a situation where he's doing the Stimulated Dummies thing, and he got back to us, you know? He was like, yo, I really want to do a song with Voodoo. I got this guy, Alchemist, and I think that he would work great with Alchemist. So that's when me and Alchemist started corresponding. And then eventually I would just go to his crib, listen to beats, you know. I'd have to pass on the L because I got random drug. I still do random drug testing. Can't do it. So I was like, nah, I passed, and he would light up, and he would play me beats and stuff, and we would do. And so we finally came to it where we did the single,
right?
And so many blessings in my career that when I look back, I took for granted because I was able to record that at D&D Studios. And anybody that is knows the history of hip hop knows the history of D&D Studios.
Yes.
And so it was just, I was looking around and I was like, yo, I'm in D&D Studios. You understand?
Was anyone else recording at that time? Did you see anybody?
Yeah. Primo was there.
Right.
Primo came in there with Nori.
Nice.
At the time, yeah. Primo came in there with Nori. And what happened was, we were recording. Alchemist was his little man anyway, right? Alchemist was his man. Alchemist
Premiers,
was like,
right.
Premiers was his little homie. Yo, come on, so anything, he kind of was like a, like Muggs was a mentor to Alchemist, but Primo was one of those guys that took him under and was like, yo, boom, boom, boom. And so Alchemist was working in D&D a lot. So, or we recording or whatever, and we doing our thing, and who walks in? Primo. And I'm like, Primo walk in and he listened. He was like, yo, that's dope, son. That's dope. I like the way you rap. His voice. I like the way you rap, man. Word. He was like, yo, I remember you from Come Off Hard, man.
Right. Well, he put it on. I was like on that mix. He did too.
And it was funny because I said, you was the first guy on major radio to play that, right?
Wow.
And he was like, word, yo, that song, I like that. So that song was dope, though. It was dope. So these are the little things where when I say, like, I felt that I had done something there. It's always a beautiful thing because to know that I touched my audience is important to me, but at the same time, these are guys that I looked up to and I thought was like here. So for them to give me that type of props, it felt like, like a big major head.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
So, the Alchemist thing came about and
was that it? Did you record? Was there an album then? Was it just like
no? That was just a one-off deal. It's funny because I think what we were trying to do at the time was we was trying to set up something for a possible solo album.
Right.
But what happened was that our main focal point at the time was trying to get the NE album released.
Right.
Because we had finished the album. We had submitted it. They were still holding on to it, and they weren't talking about releasing it anytime soon.
So just stuck at the label.
Right. So just to keep the ball rolling and to stay working, my manager got me linked up with Dante Ross.
Right.
So Dante Ross has also been a guy who's been kind of instrumental and been there in the mix in terms of my career,
right,
and the stuff that that I do. I haven't spoken to him in years,
really,
but I do, have to give him props for really looking back and really believing in me and my talent as an MC and wanting to put me out there, and knowing his history and who he's worked with.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I have to give him props and for taking his time to do that.
It's interesting, like now that we've been talking for a while too, the course of your career, you've had a lot of fans, in the business, that like in champions of both on radio. I mean, between Martin Moore and Mayhem and Stretch and Bobbito and Primo, and then guys, at labels and stuff, along with the fans. It's like you've always been like this kind of people's champ type of MC too.
Right. it's weird, and it's interesting, and it's weird at the same time.
Sure.
Seeing people even now, like you got guys like Cypher Sounds, who I can remember working at Fat Beats and coming up to us like, yo, you know. And Cypher actually is the guy who probably put Flex's ear to a lot of the stuff. Nice. Because Flex was playing some of the singles. Dope. And he would, Northeast Bronx Association between him and Charlemagne and them are all Northeast Bronx people.
Right.
And L Swigger was his next door neighbor, you know? So there is that connection, but there's Cypher, who was championing the work. Like, yo, these dudes is dope. Right. There's Enough.
Yeah, DJ Enough.
There's, who was championing the stuff. Even Rosenberg.
Right, yeah. Peter Rosenberg,
who to this day would be like, yo, if you got something, let me hear it.
Dope.
So we've always been sort of like the people's type of a thing,
and the DJs,
and the DJs,
which is funny too,
that.
Because you guys have never blatantly tried to make club records or whatever.
Right.
People just naturally gravitate to your music. Even some of the greatest songs they're slow, tempo,
not very,
which I love. It's so funny because you had that the DJ dedication song. What was that joint called?
Turning Tables,
which is for a DJ track is slow as fuck, for what it is. But it's so dope because you're giving so many great DJs their due and their propers.
Exactly.
Which is great because Natural Elements too is in your records they're of an era of college radio too. You know, when college radio helped form the audience's opinion about groups.
Exactly, and it was long. It was something that was long overdue. It was our way of thanking the forefathers of it, but also thanking the people who were there for us throughout throughout our run, So it was long overdue, and we wanted it to be something that you could sit and listen to and hear, that we appreciate what y'all done for us. We didn't have really radio in hand. We thought that it was cool to use the Adele thing. Right. But we wanted to make it a song that you could sit and listen to, and sort of a semi thank you plus a history lesson. Right. So
was that on a project, or was just a standalone?
No, it was just something that we did. Yeah, that we just put. It was just something. I don't know if it's not on. I don't believe it's on the NEP. I have.
Oh yes, the NEP is the most recent Natural Elements.
Right. Yeah. The NEP is the most recent Natural Elements thing, and that just came about because what we are trying to do is to be able to be in a position to put out things more consistently.
Absolutely.
With the way that the industry has changed and the playing field is a little bit more level now, it's a lot easier to do releases. And you can kind of shoot something out there and see how people vibe to it, and see if it catches fire. And then if it doesn't, no harm done.
Right.
But it is a lot easier to do releases than it was before, and the playing field is a little bit level, so there's a level of consistency that we're trying to have now. So you'll probably be hearing more from us on a more consistent
I certainly hope so. Yeah, I do think with a new generation rediscovering your material too creates new interest, and the smoke is kind of cleared from the early mid-2000s bullshit of the industry and hip hop in general, where things are, as they do, they're just coming kind of full circle in some ways. And you can see that there is a clear difference now. Right. Like you said, the smoke is cleared from everyone's eyes, and now people are seeing that there is a clear distinction, a clear difference. You can have that, and there's a place for that, but then there's this. There's this next levels type of shit
you know, and there is a clear distinction. People have the ability to discern what they want and what they don't. We have music discovery now,
right,
which was basically a digital way of saying what we used to do, which was basically keep our ears to the radio every night to hear what the new dopeness was, or to go to the record shops and, yo, could you play this? I want to hear what this sounds like. Right. You know, it's basically what we did on a digital level.
Yeah.
You know, but you have that now. So in that type of an environment, it makes it a lot easier for groups like and artists like myself and Natural Elements to kind of just like kind of slide in there, and put some things out, and you know, and people will, it's easier. It's just an easier situation now than it was, you know, because even we were blessed with the ability to have these resources at our disposal because of the relationships, you know, that we were able to develop through me being in the radio and all of that stuff. So even with that, it was still a challenge, you know. But now it's a little bit different, you know.
Are you still in touch with Charlemagne, or are you guys still?
Yeah,
cool?
I was with him. Charlemagne. I was with Charlemagne. We have this new song on a remix for Swigger's song Vroom.
Yes.
And what happened was Charlemagne did the track and had the idea to say, yo, and he should do a remix of this. So Swigger was like, yo, I'm going to make it happen. He contacted me, contacted A. We got in and we did the lyrics. Shaw was there, you know, and we spoke and we did. And me and Shaw spoke afterwards and stuff, and we chopped it up about possibly getting together and doing some solo stuff too.
Oh, man, I sure hope that could happen, man.
And
he's such a underrated producer, man.
Yeah.
So, it's super soulful.
Yeah.
It's like him. You got your trajectory, and with Charlemagne, it reminds me a lot of like Money Boss players in Minnesota.
Yeah,
you know, where another incredible great group that had interest from the majors.
Yeah,
that just was misunderstood by like fucking dudes with like, you know, white collar industry people.
Yeah,
you know? But also had an incredible relationship with this great producer too.
Yeah,
like Charlemagne in Minnesota are just like. These dudes are on some soulful shit that, like, you know, they want to be a Kanye without those guys too.
Yeah, definitely not. Minnesota is a great producer. Yeah, I
don't mean to go on a tangent with that.
Yeah, but, we were kind of in that same situation as they were. Yeah, you know, and Charlemagne has not received, you know, a lot of the props that he deserves.
Oh yeah, I know.
And you know, for me, that was the guy who did a lot for me on a lot of levels, more levels than just music.
Okay.
The fact that he was able to get a young kid to go up and take his attention away from the streets and bring him up there every weekend when he could have been somewhere else doing a whole bunch of other stuff is a statement in itself.
That's very cool.
So those Saturdays and that stuff, because the weekends was prime time for trouble.
Oh,
you ain't got nothing to do. You just get with
all
your
day,
boys.
all night?
So prime time for trouble. There's nobody in my hood could knew where I was on Saturday, you know. They was like, yo, we don't see him. Where you be at? And then when they saw what I was doing, they understood, and they was like, oh, we respect that. That's cool.
Yeah.
You know, so that, on that level alone, you know, I owe a lot to him. And artistically, if I can tell you, this guy had 7, 8 MCs. Some days he had more than that with other people he was bringing up there, and he needed beats for all of them.
Wow.
He needed beats for all of them. So he was doing 7, 8, 9 different beats, you know, at a time. you know,
and they're all fire too.
Yeah, all for different people,
right?
You know, all for different people. Everyone had their own style. Everyone had their own little, you know, nuances and things they liked and didn't like.
Yeah, I mean, a Mr. Voodoo song as opposed to, like, you know, L. Swift singles that he did and Nightbreed. I mean, those are very distinct,
very different, you know. And so that was what made him so great as a producer, is his ability to establish a sort of a rapport with the artist that he's working with. Because it's a funny thing, when he came up with that beat, Hemlock, that beat wasn't for me. When he did the beat, we all in the studio.
Okay.
And he put the beat on, and everybody just stopped. And they heard it, and they was like, so I looked around, and and everyone is in the corner rhyming. They rhyming. Everyone in the corner rhyming. And then he turned and he looked at me and he smiled. And I was like, yeah. And it was mine.
Hell yeah.
It was mine. I went into like the next week and did the lyrics, you know. And then that was the type of rapport that he was able to develop between himself and the artist. And he knew our styles distinctively, and he would be like, yo, Tim, I got a beat for you. I think you could do something on this. Or yo, L, I got a beat for you. I think you could do something on this, you know.
Yeah.
And he just did, and that comes from just years, weekend after weekend, Saturdays after Saturdays, after weekend of spending time with the artists, hearing them rhyme. We would rhyme in his ear. We would do whatever, you know, whatever we could to get him, you know, and then that he drew from that, and he made his beats, and he was able to like cater to everyone.
I know, and you guys left this like legacy of this amazing material. Most of it never saw physical release, and it's of this era where you had to get it on a cassette that was dubbed off the radio, you know, which is makes it that much more unique and special. It's like it's a treasure if you can find it, you know. And I'm hoping one of these days some of those other things can kind of see the light of the day too, like the classic original stuff. Just, you know, those masters may exist somewhere. I would assume, possibly.
I don't know, because what happened was there were several moves.
Sure.
Well,
the moves always kill it.
Yeah, when we first started, we were working out of the Northeast Bronx, out of a brother named Vidal Goring's crib.
Right.
Vidal Goring was one of the principal members of Fortress Entertainment.
Right.
Charlemagne's brother Randy Charlemagne was also a principal, and their homeboy, a dude by the name of Ray. I don't remember his last name, but I remember Ray specifically. And these guys all got together. They believed in the talent that they had, and they pooled their resources together to create Fortress Entertainment, which was initially Fortress Records.
Right.
So in the course of that, Vidal moved from his place a number of times, and somewhere in the midst of all of that, you know, something gets left here, something gets lost there, tapes get left here, tapes get left there, you know. So we never really had a good storage plan, you know. And what I have is basically memories and the internet.
Yeah, man.
And hopefully, if anybody out there is able to, you know, you can always get in contact with me. I'm not gonna put all my information out there, but I am reachable on Facebook and Instagram. You know, I am reachable. So, you know, I just put that out there if anybody, you know, has that, because we definitely didn't have a storage plan, and a lot of that stuff got lost in the mix.
Right. But some of it got passed around too, so you never know.
Yeah, a lot of it got passed around too. It's amazing, because there was a point before I got back up with NE that I was like, man, I don't think I'm gonna do this no more.
Really?
So yeah, and they was like, man, you crazy, man. And then A was like, here, Go on YouTube. Here. Put in your name. He was like, they got everything you ever did on there.
Right.
And I was like, what? He was like, I'm telling you. He says, you should read the comments. You should see what they're saying, you know. And so I was like, nah, it can't be positive. Nah. So, you know, I wasn't even a big YouTube dude like that. I wasn't a big internet dude like that. So I said, all right, let me give it a try. On the YouTube, and before I knew it, I was hours on there. And they had freestyles that I had forgotten about. Wow. They had songs that I had did like, yo, how did they get that?
Right.
You know, and the comments there. And then by the time I was done, I was like inspired. And it made me feel like what I was doing was not just, you know, for me. That I had it had impacted people. It touched people in a positive way. And that really is what kept me, you know, actually in it, and with the desire to continue to do it, you know, was the fact that after all this time, there are fans and there's an audience out there that still appreciates it. So, you know, I just want to say peace to y'all, because after the accolades that you get from your peers, a lot of times the only thing that would really keep you going is the fact that people have been positively impacted by stuff that you hold special to yourself, you know. So it's that feedback from the audience and the positive and the positivity and the love and the support that I get from those few that actually took the time and that keep me, you know, me where I'm gonna keep doing it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a huge fan. I appreciate your time. Good looking out. What an amazing story too, and just like, you know, maybe there's not a million albums that are out there that exist in a physical sense, but the material that you've done that people can find. It, in my opinion, it's up there lyrically with anything that Nas or Rakim or these guys did. You're just, you know, you can tell you put your heart and soul into writing lyrics, and you have a great delivery, and you do it. You're an incredible MC, man. So I hope that people can, even from this conversation, they may be able to spark a little interest in digging into the catalog that exists.
Today, definitely, you know? Do that. I'm greatly humbled to, you know, even be spoken of in the same light as my idols. You know,
for sure.
Those are the guys that taught me how to move.
Oh, yes.
And taught me how to, you know, spit and how to phrase and how to do it. You know, they set a standard for me, and that's all that I strove for. And so, you know, with that, we have to be able to do that and create a level of a standard of excellence for those that come after us to strive towards, you know. So even you can say what you want about the state of hip hop now. I think that it's the responsibility of those of us that truly care about the culture and love it and want to see it progress to create a standard or a level of excellence that the ones that come after us can strive. And those guys did it for me, and hopefully I can continue to do it for somebody, you know, that's going to come after me, or after us, or Natural Elements, when it's all said and done.
Yes. Well, I do think you left an indelible stamp in music and hip-hop and hip-hop on New York radio, too. So I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for your time.
No doubt. Thanks.
Good looking out.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, yes. That was amazing. Shout out and thank you to the one and only Mr. Voodoo for being a part of this. You've been listening to The House List. It's my weekly podcast. Please subscribe on iTunes. Subscribe on SoundCloud. We're at soundcloud.com /HouseListPodcast. You can find me on Twitter at HouseListPod. That's at HouseListPod. And check with us. Subscribe, because I'm putting up stuff once a week at least. And I guarantee you there's some back episodes. This is episode 33, by the way. if you didn't already realize that. And there's a lot of other episodes that you might dig if you like this one. So, yeah, check those out and seek out and keep an eye out for what may be on the horizon with Natural Elements and Mr. Voodoo. One of the most underrated, under the radar almost, lyrical talents of the genre of hip-hop. And I'm hoping that by us just even doing this casual conversation, excuse me, that maybe it might have put some people onto his material. You go back and seek those records out. Go back and find some of the songs and singles that we were talking about. I mean, some of them, of course, are hard to find the physical copies, but you can absolutely find some version of them somewhere on your computer. I don't doubt that. But the first two 12-inches, Come Off Hard from 94 and Lyrical Tactics from 1996, both classic records, both produced by Charlemagne. Of course, the Stimulated Records single that we talked about, produced by The Alchemist, came out in the year 2000. It's Crime Time and Lyrical Tactics Part 2. And let's see. Well, Voodoo himself released a couple of projects in the early 2000s. Let the World Know is kind of like a mini EP that I advise you trying to check out and find, if you can find it. And then New York Straight Talk reissue of the demos from the early and mid 90s. We talked about that too. Came out on Chopped Herring Records from 2015. So those are some stuff to seek out. But there's some joints out there. You have to dig a little bit, but there's some incredible music, some incredible songwriting. So yeah, just seek it out. And I was just honored and excited to be a part of the conversation with him and to have his ear for a few moments. So that was dope. And I'm going to close this out with Paper Chase, Natural Elements, Natural E, N-E. This is the record I was talking about at the beginning of the show. It came out on Dolo Records, 1997, Stretch Armstrong's label. This is Mr. Voodoo, L. Swift, a.k.a. Swigga, and A. Butta, produced by Charlemagne. This is a record where the name Culturama came from. You can hear it in the lyric. And now listening back, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it sounds close enough. You'll catch it. If you catch it, you'll get it. So let's go into this. Thank you guys for tuning in and supporting The House List. I'm going to keep doing this for y'all. So good looking out, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. All right, y'all? Peace.
Paper Chase.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yo,
What up?
I think it's time, A.E. Make these moves, you know what I'm saying?
No doubt.
Cause it's been too long.
It's been too
Long overdue.
long overdue.
It's been long overdue, man. How many years we've been rapping on the underground, man? And we got shown that we can do anything we want, you know what I'm saying? It's just about making moves. You know what I'm saying? We already did the paying dues part. It's time for us to get our piece of the pie. You know what I'm saying? Yo, Voodoo, show 'em how we get it.
As the world turns, I churn, rum on my tongue till it burn. My only concern's to learn new ways to earn the cream I yearn, like fiends do coke, to invest in West Indian smoke. Debit C notes or Lebanese dope, the more coke I conjure. The closer I get, the lamping and culture bomber. Ain't even gotta approach the drama. Sweets in the Waldorf, surrounded by thugs with sword-offs. Cashing majorities, keep law authorities ward off. Elliot Ness steadily massages my dick, trying to conjure up charges that he know won't stick. As for my chick, I can't figure why she with me. She don't fuck me, just stay high and slip keys or 50s. But to this life I'm sworn, so I weather the storm. Cause the cream the only thing a nigga need to keep warm.
It goes money and moves and money. Gotta make money, cause being broke ain't funny. You on a paper chase, this ain't nothing for free. Everybody got a price, everybody got a fee. It goes money and moves and money. Gotta make money, cause being broke ain't funny. You on a paper chase, this ain't nothing for free. Everybody got a price, everybody got a fee.
See, I got to get paid and live the life.
So what you wanna do?
I get busy whenever I pick up the mic. Cause in my lifetime, I need dough and respect. So when I write rhymes, I collect both in a check. The devil smirks deviously, acting like he's posing a threat. But life's a game and I'm controlling the deck. Meanwhile, while every brother stays holding the tech, I'm on a paper quest, but it ain't over it yet. I hope to get the riches, like King Solomon's mines. My mind's developing, so I'm still not in my prime until I gain knowledge divine. So all my people locked down, watching the time go by, we stay by. rocking a rhyme at the drop of a dime. You know I need to get the paper, cause we already paid dues and eat. Check the flavor, we about to make moves. You know what I'm saying? We about to make moves.
It goes money and moves, moves and money. Gotta make money, cause being broke ain't funny. On a paper chase, cause ain't nothing for free. Everybody got a price, everybody got a fee. It goes money and moves, moves and money. Gotta make money, cause being broke ain't funny. On a paper chase, cause ain't nothing for free. Everybody got a price, everybody got a fee. When I'm broke, feel like the world is falling down on me. That's why I often keep a frown on me. You clowns want me to pay for a position that I rightfully own. That's why I'm writing these poems. If you ain't with me, then I might be alone. But you ain't fooling me, you fooling yourself. Keep a tool in your belt, so run it, or you losing your health. Forget the next cat, study all the rules for yourself. But you stupid like students who drop out of school in the 12th. We on a paper chase, but there's so many heads in the race who be wetting your place so they can see the sweat on your face. I hope you realize how much money controlling your life. While we patrolling the night, make sure you holding it tight. You've been slipping for months, focus on the snitches and stunts. To 47 precinct kicking your front. But I wish that I could create a place where I could chill and I'm no longer on this paper chase. But natural E be like money and moves, moves and money. Gotta make money cause being broke ain't funny. On a paper chase, cause ain't nothing for free. Everybody got a price, everybody got a fee. Goes money and moves, moves and money. Gotta make money cause being broke ain't funny. On a paper chase, cause ain't nothing for free. Everybody got a price, everybody got a fee. Goes natural E, money and moves.
My man Charlamagne, he
Make money and moves.
Something my man can't do, he
Make money and moves.
to the element stress.